Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bill Naaman's Bogus Hangout. I'm going to have our guests introduce themselves. Zara.
Hi, my name is Zara Altair. I'm a writer for online content. Happy to be here.
Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Grinzer with Steam Driven Media. Actually, plugging real work for a change.
Terry.
Terry van Horne, SEO Pros.
And I'm Bill Slosky at SEO by the Sea, and I'm the Director of SEO Research for Go Fish Digital. So, an interesting thread at Twitter I've seen the last couple of days. People were asking each other who their SEO mentors were. I wrote that Ammon Johns was one of mine.
The bogus salmon charts.
And the real Ammon Johns.
I like it.
Really, I hope someday he returns to the show because he adds so much.
I hope so too. I think he might someday.
Yeah, I'm getting hints. I kind of poke him a little every once in a while.
So who would you say were your SEO mentors, Zara?
Oh, for me, Ammon is definitely one, and also David Amerland, because I like his overview of what's going on and how things proceed, and doing things like recently updating SEO help. For me, when I am talking to business owners, it's that overview that helps me convey what we're trying to achieve for business with their website, because most business owners aren't hiring me to do technical SEO, right?
Yeah.
But somehow, usually in the conversation about what the content is going to be and how we're going to approach things, and who is their audience and all that sort of thing, and who is their ideal customer and who are their real customers, because those often differ. And that all comes from that big overview that I get from David. And David is the first person who was SEO in my life. I did a Google search about SEO, and the first thing that came up was David Amerland's name, and also Nodex, which is no longer with us. Those were the first two hits I got for SEO.
Mm-hmm. Any of the rest of you have SEO mentors who you'd like to mention?
When I first started out, I was over at Web Pro World back before they got bought out, and there was an old timer even then whose name was Fathom, and he was very heavy on the light side of the duct tape, and then there's a handful of people who were not really in the business anymore, but like William Cross was more on the dark side of the web, the tape. And, so I got to play on both sides of that and determine what worked best for me. But yeah, that's been, oh, good Lord, I haven't heard from Fathom in probably 15 years. Last I heard, he was buying a submarine.
What's a transition?
Yeah.
What about you, Doc? Your mentors.
Well, actually, there's three of them in this room, because some of the first people I met online when I first started looking at SEO and site building, I was on Web Pro World too, and they had a section on the forum where if you had built a website, you could throw it up there and people would review it. And I did something with Microsoft Publisher, a mistake I never repeated. And threw it there and asked folks for their comments, and Terry and Steve both responded. And when the bleeding stopped, I threw Microsoft Publisher out the door. But been around these two guys for years, and not long at all after that, I caught view of Bill, and I found his patent stuff especially interesting. So I've been following him for years. And then, of course, old Black Knight, Ammon Johns, from Creative Site. I learned an awful lot from him too. There's been a lot of folks I've learned a lot from over the years, but those are probably the four people that I would say reach that level of mentor. Kind of scary to think that I've been learning stuff from Terry, though, because that's probably where I picked up my curmudgeon bones.
If you can't be a good example, at least be a bad example.
There you go. Be something memorable at least, right?
Now, I have clients who sometimes we get in discussions and they say, "You remember that thing that Terry pointed out back then?" I said, "Terry?"
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, on Bill David's Bogus Hangout." And I got a compliment this last week. They said, "We like it when it's just you and Terry arguing about something."
Yeah.
Yeah. I know for me now too, it's Bill, because I'll see people start, what's the word? Well, they start promoting concepts about some change somewhere. And then people get into these lively discussions, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go see what Bill has to say about this before I get much further into this.
Go to the authority on the subject, yeah.
Yeah.
So Google announced that they're not going to do any more updates till the end of the year.
Yeah.
Which is kind of good because,
It's getting late.
I mean, remember 2003 with the Florida update?
Yep.
That didn't win too many fans at Google. Yeah.
That was the first time I ever saw them get real negative press. Like real negative press. And it was all about when they did it and what it did to small businesses.
And it's not really necessarily a situation that you want going on during a pandemic either.
Right.
When a lot of businesses have been hindered.
Yeah, an
I
awful
think
lot of them
this
are
year-
barely holding on, if at all.
Barely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Some businesses online have done well, like Zoom.
Oh, sure.
Not every business has.
e-commerce is up 3%. So, if you have an e-commerce site, you didn't fare as badly as those who are just brick and mortar. In fact, that's what they started doing up here, is giving people free websites. And people, if you're in this situation, Google gives free websites too. From what I've seen, they rank pretty good. So.
But it makes a difference if you're like selling goods. If you're doing something like providing travel information, travel plans.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily going to do so well.
No.
Yeah, well, in hospitality, lodging and restaurants. I mean, no restaurant can be profitable when they're having to run a 20 to 30% occupancy, even if there's partial opening allowed.
Right.
Their margins just aren't that great.
Right.
Most restaurants have at most maybe 5 or 6% margin.
Yeah.
But they do have takeout and delivery options. They have options available to them that didn't exist 10 years ago or so.
That's
Bars
good for some
and
restaurants.
For some
Restaurants make their money on alcohol, right?
Yep.
That's where the
Yeah,
money
most
is.
companies, that's
If
how
they
they
can't serve alcohol, they don't make money.
So you don't have takeout services that provide food from restaurants and drink too?
Oh, no, not in Canada anyhow.
Not in Canada?
Oh,
So-
no. Like
So
I think
George,
the only place where you can buy beer outside of a government establishment
yeah.
is in Quebec, where you can buy it in a grocery store. They may have just started that in a few other provinces, but yeah, it's really good. I mean, they used to close the hotels here at night at 1 o'clock.
So DoorDash won't bring you 6-pack.
No, they couldn't do it any time of day. That's called bootlegging, actually.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It was hard for me when I was young and worked the late shift, finish at midnight, pay double for every beer you drink.
Mm-hmm. So have any of you seen the small business advisors from Google?
I just saw that it was happening. It's an hour consultation. Is that what it is?
50
The
minutes.
The first one is free.
Oh,
Then they
first one
charge.
is free. Okay.
And they're 50-minute sessions at
And they're-
$39.95.
And they're on a range of topics, but no just SEO.
Yeah,
No,
no SEO. It's pretty well just the major products that Google has outside of search. So analytics, PPC, Google My Business, YouTube, and I might be Webmaster Tool or Google Search Console. I keep forgetting they change the name too often for me.
And YouTube too, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
YouTube is a pretty big channel, probably, next to Google itself, the second biggest search engine as far as queries go. I mean, you take all the other search engines, put them together, and they don't meet what YouTube does.
Well, that might be worth getting the free console for 50 minutes for a one-time thing to see how well it works.
Yeah.
What is Google Workspace?
Oh, that was one of them too. Not a clue. That's
Oh,
probably,
you don't know either?
it might be the Google Docs and spreadsheets and all that stuff, but don't quote me on that.
Oh, what we know is Google Drive, you mean?
No, Google Workspace would be the tools, right?
Yeah. So
But I don't know for sure.
Okay.
So the Search 2020 conference that took place a couple weeks ago, I guess it was 50-minute long presentation. They showed off subcategories in search results as something that they would be launching. And people have been seeing those in the wild. So sort of like the categories you get when you do reverse image search at the top of the results, they show little bubbles. You can click on them and they'll categorize things. They're doing that with search results too.
Yeah, they're more filters.
I haven't seen it.
That's something I kind of, when I read the article, I thought, well, when I think of categories, right, I don't think of different parts of a website. For instance, reviews, video, those are all parts of a website that you would want to go and visit.
Right.
So they actually, I wouldn't call it categorization.
Are they categorizing by topics? Are they categorizing by page, by content on a website?
It looked like content on the website. But
Really?
you would have to, I only saw, there's only been 2 reported sightings, and they were both of like reviews, videos, but no products.
Okay.
So it seemed more like, to me, they were filtering the useful parts of an e-commerce site, for instance, like the return policy and that stuff could be there as well.
Well, I could see somebody searching for, say, iPhone and getting bubble that says chargers or covers,
Accessories, that sort of thing. Yeah.
accessories. Yeah.
That would make more sense than what I saw. As far as categories go, those look like more elements of a website,
Yeah.
search and
Have-
whatnot.
Which is
Have you seen
doing
those
what
up there yet, Terry?
No, I don't think they're in the wild much. There's only a couple of reported sightings.
I mean, if the Search 2020 presentations be believed, we'll see a lot more of those, but they may still be experimenting with them.
Oh, and it could be the results that I saw were those different parts of a website, right? That's what I meant. I only saw one result, so I can't,
But they've thoroughly adopted those for the reverse image search, those types of categories. So having them there leads me to believe that they'll probably include them in web search results too.
Yeah.
So if you're including them in a web search,
Yeah.
so subcategories. How does a subcategory show up as a subcategory of a category in a web search? Just asking.
Well, that's what I mean. They are actually categories. So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I really like your idea of filters because I'm not.
filter is a better label for it, in my opinion.
So if you search in image search for Donald Trump, you'll get
Loser.
you'll get some categories. No, that might be one, but let's you'll get categories like Time magazine covers.
Okay.
Right.
You'll get satire. You'll get different image types in addition to different events, like rallies.
To me, those are
Things
still
like that.
categories.
Oh,
Those
I'm
are-
telling you.
those-
I was using. Well, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Bill.
Those are still categories, but they're not necessarily the same type of categories. They're different. Instead of topical categories like historic events,
Mhm.
like White House press conferences or rallies. You have categories like illustrations.
Yeah.
It kind of makes you think that what they're really doing is they're offering you category based upon the types of queries that they think most people are searching for.
They're probably based to some degree on search history, but there are some types of terms or words that have multiple meanings, like Jaguar or Lincoln. Lincoln is an ex-president. Lincoln is a town in North Dakota. Lincoln is a type of car.
Down in Nebraska, too.
Nebraska, yeah. So they'll show you the categories at the tops of the results and say, this is the one I'm looking for.
Now, what you described in images, I
Yeah.
don't call that categories because I was using it the other day and I could choose between vector images, draw all kinds of stuff. There's like 30 categories. And if you go into that, you get another 20 categories. So that's more topical. Yeah.
I like doing searches for places with the reverse image search with the categories because they'll show the related entities within a place. Like I search for Carlsbad, California, where I'm at, and they'll show Legoland as one of the categories. So you can see a bunch of pictures of Legoland. Mm-hmm. So if you're traveling somewhere and you want to visit, you can see what else might be there.
Those come up pretty regularly, but to me, those are all categories. I'm still confused about subcategories.
So category could be a topical category, could be a topic, or it could be a material based, like with images, you've got drawings, you've got paintings, you've got photographs, you've got magazine covers. It could be something like satire. And you could have satire images. So it's potentially a range of different types of categories. We'll see what search categories might be like when they finally start becoming more popular. And I think they will. I think we'll see them.
I think those carousels are a big part of mobile search for them. Be more and more of it.
I see carousels as a type of featured snippet. You ask for something like tallest skyscraper, it doesn't return a featured snippet. Now it returns a carousel of like the top 10 or top 20 tallest skyscrapers.
Usually images, right?
Yeah. You used to be able to do a search for Chicago Cubs roster, and it would show you a knowledge panel with the table with all the players on the team. Now it shows you a carousel of all the players.
Yeah.
So Google's still evolving when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, I did a search the other day on some SEO type products, and the whole top, even on desktop, was a whole bunch of logos from the different main SEO tool companies. Like you could tell they came from the logo stuff that you put in schema.
Yeah.
That's where it seemed to look like it was coming from.
And that sounds like something they'll try out to see how it works. If you don't recognize the logos, you may not find the place you're looking for.
Right. But you can tell that they see that as something they're going to use quite a bit, because in Search Console now there's a place just for markup on logos. Or is it mine? Maybe because they found an error in one of my schemas.
Right before we went live, we were talking in the green room about knowledge graphs. And one of the things I noticed when I checked mine was that a blog post that I just published yesterday shows up. There's the knowledge graph over on the side, right?
Yeah.
And then right below that is the blog post, which I hadn't seen before. Is anybody else? Does that happen for you pretty frequently?
I've seen them do something like that.
Okay, every once in a while. Okay, because
Yeah.
I just hadn't seen it for me before, and I was like, "Whoa! I just did that yesterday," and there it was.
Yeah, they're sort of treating them like the posts that you can do for your knowledge panel. It's sort of like recent things from SEO by the Sea, and they might show a blog post I just wrote.
Yeah, let me see if it has a label on it. I just remember that it was. Nope, it just says Zara Altair on Google. So they're pulling it from Google My Business, I guess.
What was your query? Was your query your name?
Yeah, my query was my name, and I was just checking for knowledge panels, and I hadn't looked lately, and I looked, and then when I saw that is below the little knowledge panel and the testimonials and all that stuff. So below that it says Zara Altair on Google, and then it has
within the knowledge panel itself or under it?
Under it.
Under it. Okay. Because it sometimes includes stuff in the knowledge panel, like reviews.
Yeah, the reviews are there. The reviews are up above. It's all just part of the one big box, as it were.
Yeah.
I just hadn't seen that before. So I was just checking if that was something new or if it's just that I'm behind the times.
No, they're including carousels for top stories.
Okay.
for some queries too. Things to do in. So I search for a place, and the top results will be things to do in Carlsbad. And they'll show like 3 different things to do.
Events happening today.
Yeah. And they're not using event schema for those. They're often using event websites to identify them.
Or I know on desktop, all you have to do is call a page events whatever, and they'll treat that page like it's all events. That's on desktop, not mobile.
I do a search for like San Diego music, and they'll show music events happening at local churches and things like that. Not really concerts or so on, but they were sort of unexpected.
Well, that's kind of nice for those small organizations.
Yeah. There's a local museum, the Museum of Making Music.
Oh, I love that museum. That is a cool museum.
And they get some unusual performers there. A lot of world musicians.
Mm-hmm.
So SEO Roundtable reported that Google is sharing crawl budget between organic and ads. How does an ad use up crawl budget?
Here's the thing. That's actually incorrect. It's every entity that comes from Google and indexes your page, they count that as part of your crawl budget. Everything. Because they say we don't want to hit any server too hard. So the crawl budget is for a website by all the different bots.
Okay, so it's got something to do with politeness.
Yes, it has all to do with savings, not overburdening a server. That's what it's all about.
And that's how robots.txt first originated. They said, okay, these rude robots keep on invading our websites.
Yeah, but they're bad robots. They keep coming in.
Yeah, the web's filled with bad robots.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
If people really knew how many bots hit a website, they'd be astounded.
Yeah.
Analytics doesn't show that stuff, but if you keep track of it yourself, you'll see the hits by robots, or not hits, but the requests by robots often are a lot more than all the pages you search. So
I moved to a different host a couple of years ago, and I was using up bandwidth at an incredible rate, and said something to one of the support people, and they said, we'll take a look. And they updated my HT access and blocked a ton of robots.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
They said, you've got bad robots.
a lot of them.
Yeah.
Some of them aren't actually bad. They're just small search engines that nobody knows about.
There are services that crawl the web, like Turnitin.bot, which is one that's supposed to be protect you from plagiarism. And so they'll crawl the web, copy all the content, and then if you submit a paper to them, they'll tell you whether or not it was from the web.
So they're trying to spot plagiarism.
Yeah.
For papers and stuff for universities.
Yeah.
Well, how is that different than plagiarism checkers, which essentially do the same thing?
It was just a service I saw that
Oh, okay.
it wasn't necessarily protecting website owners, but it was protecting teachers from students who were turning in papers and they copied off the web.
All right. But the reason I'm asking is, you know, there are services that check for plagiarism.
Yeah.
I actually think even Grammarly has something like that.
So this site was crawling your pages, indexing your content, and not returning any benefit to you.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
That's 90% of them, actually.
It's like when Google spends all its time analyzing images on websites. It's visiting pages to learn from the images. It's not violating copyrights of those images because it's not using the images. It's learning from them. And it's using up your bandwidth to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not a lot of your bandwidth, but some of it.
Yeah, people don't realize how many different crawlers Google has. They have lots of it. Bet you there's some we don't even know about.
Yeah. There were few patents that were referring to some of those crawlers as janitors.
Cleaning up the messes.
Well, they were doing things like identifying birth dates of celebrities.
Oh, okay.
So they'd want to know when, for instance, Britney Spears' birthday was. They would have a janitor go check, and they'd add that to a database somewhere.
It's almost like a fact-checking thing.
Yeah, sort of. And that's how you end up with something like a knowledge graph.
And schema for fact-checking.
Yeah. Okay, so there was another recent article that said Google algorithms updates. Some updates are jarring, some updates are really smooth. And they were trying to make a distinction between something like a Panda and maybe some of the other things they do.
Phantom updates. We're basically on top of Panda. They did almost the exact same thing. To me, it comes down to some things, they're making a major change. For instance, Panda was a change in the way they decided quality of a site. It went down to the page level and wasn't so dependent on links. They were actually looking at parts of the page. And link quality in Penguin. After that, all the other stuff people have been talking about, it's mainly just building on top of that, more machine learning to smooth those things out even further. Maybe the medic update would be a disruptive one because it looked at some metrics.
I would think the what medic update might have been a different experience for different websites.
Oh, for sure.
For some websites, it had a lot larger impact than others.
Well, it depended what you were doing. For instance, almost every one of the e-com sites that I saw in any of the reports were almost always doing reviews. And it was the reviews that were the issue. For instance, not verifying that the product was actually bought by the person doing the review seemed to be part of it.
Really?
Yeah. Could definitely see there the ones who got hit quite often were not mentioning whether the product was purchased or not. In other words, how can you do a review if you don't own the product? So they would be fake reviews, right?
Yeah.
Also, I thought that they seemed to dislike anything where it was you doing your own reviews, not by a third party.
Okay, we were talking about this briefly, Terry, before the show started. Google's doing machine learning while they're crawling now.
Yeah, that was very interesting. Now, Mr. Martin
Split.
Split said that he wasn't sure if it was just an experiment that they're doing now or whether it was they did it all the time. So he wasn't sure about that, but they are doing it. Now, the things that he said they were looking at was trying to ascertain site quality or the quality of the content they were about to crawl, and also try and improve their refresh frequency or the frequency that they're updating pages, right? Going back to them to re-index.
Yeah.
Which that seems, that seems like a good thing to do. However, if it was me, I would be just doing a last update check on the server. And if it says she's fresh, I go look at it. And if it said it was fresh every time, I penalize them for cheating.
So caffeine these days is the official indexer of Google, but Googlebot is the crawler. So the two work together.
Well, they call it parallel indexing. So I think when it's crawling, it's kind of indexing at the same time.
And indexing in part includes things like classification
Yeah.
and analysis.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they don't even really download the HTML on the page. I'm convinced of it. Part of the reason was when they were discussing indexing, Martin again was discussing indexing. He said they had to put it through a special HTML validator in order to figure out the headings on a page, which was the most important. They had to put it through a different program that basically figure out what HTML was there before.
They're trying to identify headings?
Yeah, to see which was the most important, which is why they basically said you should use headings in a hierarchy used properly the way we used it.
So if Google's moving into this passage indexing,
Yes.
headings becomes very important and essential because
Yes.
they help determine context of passages.
Yeah, your research has said that's definitely the case with passages. Yeah. It's all about context.
I think the interesting thing about passages, from what I understand, is that the specific passage with the answer to the query doesn't necessarily have to be in context in the big sense with the rest of the page.
I would agree with that. I think that's why they're going to passages. For instance, I also think you might see some of those answer boxes just be removed and replaced with passages that answer the same questions. Because when you look at the answer boxes, right, there's a lot of, it's dynamic. So there's multiple topics. And if you took passages out of a page, you're more likely to find stuff that will match those other questions.
Right. So that's how what I really like Bill's explanation that, it's very like featured snippets in that regard. It's the thing that pops up for that.
Also, the way they calculate the ranking is very similar to featured snippets, right, Bill?
I've been seeing more highlighted passages in search results. So instead of a box that shows an answer box that shows a featured snippet, you click on a link to something, it shows highlighting on the page you go to.
On the page.
Yeah, I think you'll also find that page might not have to rank for the query to get that passage
It doesn't.
like a featured snippet.
It's quite possible that the page is identified because it's got so many similarities between a question and a query and a question that appears on a page as in a heading that might be answered by passage. So the old days of creating lots of headings that are stuffed with your keyword isn't necessarily the right approach. Because if you're creating pages that answer questions, you want the headings as the questions you're answering.
Well, if you use
Right. Well,
already, I would say don't change what you're doing if you're doing them right already. I would change what I was doing to.
Right. But people are continuously creating new content. So.
That was the gist of the article that I wrote yesterday in relation to passages is that, what does this mean for my business? Well, not much. If you keep doing if you've been doing the right things, and then I just reiterated, this is how you blah, 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 that's still going to point in the right direction to a passage that is the right answer for a query.
Yeah.
I mean, it is like featured snippets. It's just new labeling.
See, for me, it won't change much. I start an article by writing all the headings out before I even write anything. So I know what topics I'm going to cover.
I know what I do. I start with this blank page and then I have the main thing, and then I add little subheadings and then I go, okay, now I've got to write this stuff, and then
Fill it all
start
in.
filling it all in. Yeah, exactly.
Then you can write so that you're segueing to the next topic.
Right. Yeah. Well, one of the things I do when I'm listing those different headings is there's a step there where I look at those and I think, oh, well, maybe this one needs to come first. So I may move their order around before I actually start writing. But that's it. I take the big concept, and then, well, what are the little concepts that go with this? And I get those headings, and then the article is what ties all this stuff together.
Your transitions between your sections.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, it's not going to change things much. For others, it's going to be.
How would they change, Terry? I mean, theoretically, we're saying we're changing because we want our passages to show up. How would they change?
Well, they should be adding more headings if they don't have them already.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying.
I read a lot of stuff.
If you haven't been doing this before, now's the time to start doing it.
Learn how to write it.
Hello. Okay.
But I see lots of posts now where, there's no headings between it's just paragraph after paragraph and not really a lot of headings.
Or the headings that they're using are stupid things like how, why, when.
Yeah.
That tells the search engine a lot.
Doesn't tell me much, right?
Well, if it was a news article, that would work, Doc.
Well, maybe.
How, why, when, and where. That's the news.
But even a press release is going to have, things filtered down, the big who, what, where, why, stuff, and then more, and then granular detail, and then some kind of summary.
Zara, but I see an awful lot of press releases that have no headings whatsoever. I mean, a lot of them. There'll be 12 paragraphs, and there'll be a title and an author box, and 12 paragraphs. Totally unrelated. I mean, there's no interconnection whatsoever from paragraph to paragraph. So there's no flow. They're just somebody gave them a 1992 press release had template. And
Format,
said, "Here,
yep.
here's the template. Fill in the blanks."
I need to get going, guys.
Oh, I was just going to ask you
absolutely.
about the
Thank you,
PPC, Steve, so you could have something to discuss today.
I'll give you 1 minute.
Okay. And it's so rare that you and I agree on anything. I thought we had to discuss it today.
So what Terry's referring to is Google's new recommendation that you switch your keyword targeting in your pay-per-click campaigns to broad match,
Right.
and just let Google figure it out, and they'll do just fine for you. And
Access to your checking account,
half of these, there are actually people out there who think this is a good idea.
It's back later.
I can't even get Google to figure out what side of the transaction certain clients are. How the heck are they going to be able to figure out who the customer is?
Well, you did a piece for Search News Central a couple of years ago on something like this, where they were automatically switching stuff over to broad.
Yeah.
And not only were they switching things to broad, but then they're widening the definition of what close variant is.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my clients offers a certification program, and for 4 months, Google was teeing off on the word certification versus what they were actually certifying. So we were getting clicks for pretty much every kind of certification program in the world. And there were some very interesting. I mean, the best example I've got is we paid $12 for a single click, and the search phrase that Google gave us was mini donut sprinkle certification. $12 for the click.
Oh my God.
And they were certified trainers, right?
Yeah. And
So
as it is right now, I have one.
really going to work because we know what we're doing, right?
Yeah. I have one client right now where our average click is in the $18 to $20 range. And we're fine with that. But then every once in a while, Google will throw in a totally unrelated click that isn't even a close variant, and it's $250 or $300. And it's like, what it looks like to me is the algorithm's going, well, let's see if this really expensive click converts, because if it does, we're just going to throw them a bunch of these.
I think that's a function of their, let's see if these guys are paying any attention algorithm.
Yep.
Exactly.
Well,
And if they start taking away what they show us,
considering Google's history of experimenting with its users, I felt when I read about that, the broad category search, that this was like another experiment. Come here and do this, and we're going to test what we think is maybe our theory and see if it really works or not at your expense.
They're con men. PPC is a con. Like, here's the thing, right? Broad match is being known for, like, I did PPC about 12 years ago, and broad match was the very worst converting thing on the
Yeah.
planet, and it costs you the most money. You know,
Broad
I
match
did
is only
exact match phrases and was able to
Yeah,
cut the costs in half.
But you can't even trust their exact match anymore because they've
Nope.
totally changed their definition on that too.
Yep. Exact match means
broad-
whatever we think is exact is exact.
broad match has its place, and it's great for discovery on a very, very restricted
Limited.
campaign with a very
Yeah.
low budget, and you can use it for discovery for things that you hadn't thought of, because at the end of the day, searchers are pretty stupid. They will type in the weirdest shit, and you just have to kind of run with it, because if you're going by what you think you know, it's going to fail. So you have to be willing to throw some money away.
Keyword as an approach using keywords is an inexact science. It's like
Sure.
a guess on the part of a searcher as to what might potentially show up that might be close to what they're looking for. Which word should I use? Let me try this. And sometimes you have people trying one thing and seeing what the results are, and then picking something out from those results that's more like what they really want to find. And doing an iterative process where they keep on picking out things that are closer to what they're looking for. It's like playing Marco Polo.
We tend to use phrase-based search more because you can start injecting some intent. And with that, you can, and then you use your ad copy to further refine the intent, and you hope that they actually pay attention to it. You can tell which people are just first result on the page clickers, because those are almost always bouncers. And so it's a challenge. And the idea of letting Google just have an open checkbook with broad match and their best guess at user intent, absolutely not going to happen. As I reject any their dynamic ads.
I did work with a client who insisted on doing their own keyword research once. Yes. And they came up with a bunch of terms that they identified as having high search volumes because they were broad match terms. And I had to explain why that wasn't necessarily a good idea, because they were going to end up getting searchers who weren't really looking for what they had to offer because they were too broad.
There's also, it's known that an exact match phrase, they're further along in the conversion.
Yeah,
because they know what they're looking for.
In the customer journey or the buying cycle. Yeah.
Right. They're further along in the conversion cycle. So.
We recently did a piece for a client on building these very high dollar home theaters, like your entire basement, you turn it into a professional home theater.
Yeah.
And the theme of the article was to talk about the different authorities, the different contractors that'll be involved in that. I mean, from your sound engineers and your drywallers and all this. And the keywords they wanted to use, one of the keywords that they wanted to use, which is a very high volume keyword, was construction. I said, well, if you really want to go down that cliff, just take a leap there, buddy. But it's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars a month, and you ain't going to get shit out of it.
Just take the bills into the washroom and use them for toilet paper. That's where it's going to end up.
Construction, it gets like 3.5 million hits a day. How many of those do you think are? How many of those do you think are building home theaters?
So if your actual purpose behind doing SEO is money laundering,
there you go. Perfect.
That was a good one, Bill.
Yeah.
I don't do PPC ads or anything like that, but I do have discussions with clients about keywords and that same kind of thing where, they think construction is one of the perfect words that should be there, and it's as though not using it because the relationship is so broad. It isn't narrowed down to the function of what their product does in any specific way whatsoever.
I worked for an agency that did SEO and PPC.
Okay.
And one of our clients was a company that made storm windows and doors.
Okay.
And we were in the office on a Monday, a snowy Monday. It was a holiday, and it was snowing. So lots of people were home during the storm, and they were cold. So they were clicking on our client's PPC ads. And our client calls us and says, turn it off. There are too many of them.
Oh, no, that is funny.
Mm-hmm.
But see, they're at the top of the results. That's a thing with ads. And a lot of people, it's better than it was, but it's still hard to figure out that they're ads, not listings. It's better than it was, but it's still not really that,
When people have gotten to the point where they want to become your customer and they see your result, it's the top, it's fine. They'll click on it. They don't care if it's an ad or not.
Right. Most people don't care if it's an ad or, if it looks like what they want, that's what they're going to click on.
Right.
Well, and I've talked to a couple of users who recognize that that it's an ad. If it's at the very top, they look for that little icon. They know it's an ad, but if it's the one they're looking for, if it's the company that they want or the product that they want, these two people actually told me they figured they were doing the guy a favor to click on it. So if you want to do him a favor, scroll down about 3 or 4 and find his non-ad listing and click on that. Every time you click on that, you're costing him money. Because he was actually going and clicking on his brother-in-law's business ad to help him out. Now, luckily, it was like a $1.60 a click. He wasn't going to put the guy in a poorhouse, but do yourself a favor. Don't tell your brother-in-law you've been helping him, okay? Because he ain't going to want to hear that.
Yeah, that is something that people don't understand, and they think that clicking on that, I don't think that's unusual at all. People think
right. When
ad is like helping the business.
When robots click on your ad, that's one thing, but when your friends click on your ad,
exactly.
You need new friends.
Oh, God.
My brother cuts and pastes the URLs. Doesn't believe Google should make money off the internet.
There you go.
But at inspect.com, where I do a lot of writing, and then we work with Minds Nebula for PPC stuff. What happens is that Minds Nebula does all the research and the keyword targeting and all that stuff. And then when it's time to brainstorm new material for writing, I go through and look at what is working in the ads. So that's kind of how we work that out. But I mean, that's
what I found with ads. You have a lot more control over the message and when they're getting it. And you can actually figure out hooks that you can put into a web page that'll help it convert better.
But your advertisements tend to be transactional queries rather than informational. Sometimes you want informational queries.
Right.
All right.
And sometimes you need to have things like blogs on an e-commerce website so you can have pages for informational queries. where you can explain how something works or
Yep.
provide FAQs and have good calls to action on those informational pages to the transactional pages.
Yep.
Right.
So that you can be part of the customer journey, the place where they research and the place where they buy
So,
together.
for an example, what I did was I changed an ad so it said complete the form in 3 minutes, because the form was really, really long and took longer than 3 minutes to fill it out.
Yeah.
Well, I found that we got a lot more clicks as soon as I put 3 minutes to complete the form. That's how I convinced them to shorten the form and take the information online. I got them down to 3 fields in the form. Did all the pre-qualification in 3 questions and done. And I learned that by something I put in a PPC ad and saw it got that many more clicks.
People wanted a relatively quick, painless buying experience, huh?
Right. Well, people probably have never done one. The form is about 4 pages long.
Well,
They want to know everything about you, past.
and how did you find us? Right.
Yeah. Well, a lot more than how did you find it? But yeah, there's a lot of history and fooling around. Same with by looking at the ads, I figured out that anybody who didn't require faxing in their in the process, did better. So they took faxing out of the thing as well.
Oh, you want me to fax the information to you? Well, I
They
don't.
were faxing.
We don't have fax machines in my house.
That's right. So that's why they weren't qualifying was from that. I learned that.
Yeah.
So you can use ads in a lot of really useful ways in your SEO. You can discover new keywords, all kinds of stuff. That's why that's generally, if I'm doing SEO and they're doing PPC, I want to talk to the PPC company as well.
So this is a reason to explore SERP places, search result pages
Yes.
for your keywords. Find out what everybody else is doing wrong so you don't make the same mistakes. Because if you've got the better offer, you're likely going to be the place you're more likely going to be the place people click on and go to.
A lot of times that's the difference, is the offer that's in that meta description. Right?
Yeah. You've got a very brief, very short window of opportunity to catch somebody's attention and persuade them to come see you. So if you rank highly, but nobody ever clicks on your result, you're sort of wasting your SEO.
Well, that's usually where you should start looking for the low-hanging fruit, is in GSC, the title and click-through rates.
Yeah. Well, it's sometimes a matter of identifying niches that people are interested in. Sometimes people overshoot and they want everybody. So they make really broad promises. And sometimes people are just looking for part of what's being offered. And if somebody's making the broad promise and you make the more specific promise that people have more interest in, you're possibly going to steal traffic away from them. Well, we're at the top of the hour, everybody. So that's going to be it for today. Thank you all for joining us.
Somebody commented on Facebook the other day that they felt really strange because they realized that they were like an idiot waving goodbye at the end of all these Zoom rooms. So I promised, and I said, that makes perfect sense. So the next time I close out a Zoom, I'm just going to blow him a kiss.
So
Thank you all. Bye now.